to become the first channel partner. So Oberon Technologies actually is the first Arbortext PTC channel partner specifically focused on Arbortext since they started the channel partner program. So on that note,
I have your slides.
You have our slides. Excellent. And it's funny because now my web events online meeting says that the launch has been successful, so I'm almost into Citrix, but nonetheless, let's just get started. The first slide is the client profile. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let me begin by just talking a little bit about who this customer is, how we got involved, and what they were trying to do. The use case that we're discussing here is with a company called the American College. Now, the American College has been around for 80-plus years, and they are a educational institution located in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. They specifically are focused on financial and insurance companies, and they are the accreditation for the majority of financial and insurance credits for individuals. So as an example, if everyone's familiar with the accountant, if you're an accountant and you're a CPA, certified public accountant, that means you actually have been certified and accredited by going through various CPA courses. In the insurance and financial industries, they have similar things, similar accreditations. And the American College is the institution that credits these individuals in the financial and insurance fields. So they get, their customer are companies like Morgan Stanley, Vanguard, Prudential, all the major financial and insurance organizations in the United States will send individuals to their training to become accredited. Oh, Liz, I'm finally connected, by the way, so I can see your slides. That's great. One of the things. Welcome to GoToWebinar. Okay, now I'm on. Let me turn the speaker off of the computer. Hold on.
If you go in audio selection, just select use telephone.
Okay, now I'm muted. I should be good.
Do you see the audio mode?
No, on the menu, where is that? Oh, audio mode, yes, use telephone. Got it. Got it. Perfect. Okay.
There you go.
The other, so let me give you a little background of what they did. They have about 50 professors, between 40 and 50 professors that are full-time employees. Most of them have doctorate degrees in economy, econ, or financial, or various insurance-type backgrounds. Their professors are also the ones who actually create the various courses. So not only do they have training courses that they actually train and certify on, they have a variety of textbooks that you can purchase as well that kind of correlate to the training courses. In addition, about 4 or 5 years ago, they launched a broadcast system. So if you go to their website, you'll see that they actually televise and have a television studio as well, that they can now do multimedia training, as well as they do a news broadcast and a variety of other things. Their courses, they have 9 designations, but their courses, if you've attended the entire course, they actually have 2 master's degrees that you can get, and they have several students who have gone through this master's program throughout these last 80 years. I mean, it's pretty in-depth. They publish over 200 books, 11 different types of books, and today they have converted and now have all of their content in a DITA XML-based single source They have over 5,000 source documents that have now created over 45. Actually, they're close to, I'd say, 55 to 60,000 DITA files or reusable objects, concepts, tasks, things of that nature within their repository. And they have about 50 users, which, quite frankly, most of those are the actual professors, and then they have about 3 to 5 system administration folks who are using the tools as well for testing and QAing and in a variety of support positions. Okay, next slide. The business challenge that they incurred was they were in a word paradigm, I should say a word source files, but a book paradigm. And so everything was done based on an entire book or topic, I should say. So if you wanted to take a course on mutual funds, you would actually look at the whole training course, which had a variety of components to the mutual funds, but because it was in a monolithic Word file, in the way that they had written it, you basically got the whole course whether you needed the whole course or not. They were constantly creating one-offs. In other words, companies like Morgan Stanley would come in and say, okay, we want to get specialized on a specific financial package, more specific than just mutual funds. And the American College would then, the professor would actually have to go into that Word file and take the components out of it and basically build a separate training Word file for that particular client, and then teach the course and you know, so forth and so on. They'd actually would go into the textbook as well that actually would correlate to the course, and they could modify that in a very manual process. And it was all copy and paste. There was a ton of reuse, and as you can imagine, the amount of documents they'd have to maintain was astronomical, especially if you accumulate this over the 80 years that they've been in business. The Word templates, really, there was no structure to them. They tried to apply structure, but what they really found was every professor was different and had a different, unique kind of way of putting things together. The other thing was their branding was very inconsistent. Again, based on the autonomy of these professors, how autonomous they were, they actually could, you know, each professor kind of had their own way of branding their information. So, you know, their business challenge was, how do we, you know, take this information and make it more consistent and be able to meet these custom one-offs that their clients were demanding? Next. So one of the things, on top of all of this, the other thing that they were challenged with is, if everybody recalls here, you know, we're still coming out of one of the worst, if not the worst, economic financial situation that the United States has seen in you know, even before the, possibly even worse than the Depression. And about 3 or 4 years ago, that downturn started to occur, and the American College saw that they were headed for some economic troubles, especially when the Enrons and some of the financial institutions started to be uncovered, and the government would have to step in, and just the financial downfall that was occurring really worried these guys, because they figured if financial companies and insurance companies were cutting back, obviously training and accreditation was going to take was going to be an expense for them to do that. So that they realized that could be something that they would be hit with. So they knew that they had to do something about this, and that's where they went down this whole path of DITA and the reuse. They needed to expand their classes, because what they realized is that their data was locked up in each of the course. One of the things that they had done was that they actually had gone out and talked to the clients to find out how they used the information. And on top of it, they also went to their support group to ask when their customers called in, how did they answer the questions, because their customer support area was actually using the training and textbooks to actually get the answers. And what they found was that the test book and the study guides, which are the two books that had a test question, gave the answers, and they found that the answers that they gave were like a paragraph to 2 paragraphs long, but they found that's what their customers used probably extensively in their everyday jobs. And they also realized that the customer support group was answering a lot of their support questions by going to the test book and the study guides. So that was a very interesting thing for them, but they realized that if that's the case, then going to a DITA topic, it would be fairly easy to take their test books and their study guides and migrate them into a DITA source. So they did that first. And once they did that, they could easily start putting together more custom test books and custom study guides. Now on top of that, they realized the next step was to get their textbooks into the DITA infrastructure as well. And in order to do that, the textbook was very much a book paradigm, but they realized what they needed to do was to force change in the behavior of the professors. They made them take the textbook and rewrite the entire textbooks that they have by going in and starting off querying the test books and the study guides that they had done in DITA by creating DITA maps. So they would actually go in and create DITA maps on the test guides and study book because that's the way the information was being used by their customers. And then they took the textbooks that correlated with them and rewrote those in the DITA format, in modular format. So now they actually had test books, which question and answers, and the study guides associated with them, along with the textbooks, migrated over all into DITA, with the textbooks being rewritten in a DITA structure. It did a couple things for them. One, it forced the professors to start thinking in modular terms versus a book paradigm, which is what they were all used to. And it allowed them then to improve on the information because of the surveys and the research they had done with their clients that said, hey, I need answers. If I need to know how a mutual fund does this, today the younger generation, it's a Google generation, and they put in a question, they'd like the answer that quickly, and so that's how they use the test books and the study guides, and then by adding the textbooks information, which was much more deeper and robust in content, it was associated now to the actual test and study guide objects as well. So now they've got they have built this whole infrastructure based on DITA that allows them to do custom training, custom textbooks, and really service their clients to the point where the clients actually now can come in and fill out a form to say these are the actual topics that I want to be trained on, and then internally the professors can build these custom training and textbooks in a significant amount of reduction of time than it did in the past. So this has been a huge way to improvements for them, and I'll talk a little bit more about how they've expanded that whole concept there as we move on here. Let's see. Next, let's move on. We'll talk a little bit more about justifying the project a little later. I think I've covered a lot of this. I mean, they saw the benefits that by going to this, they could automate what was more of a manual process and customizing these by now using DITA maps and clicking on various objects to build specific DITA maps that would then pull in and create these custom training pieces for their clients. It saved them a lot more time. They could get quicker time to market. The other thing was that they had various mom-pop shops. Their biggest competitor, although there were some mom-pop shops out there doing this, their biggest competitor was the Morgan Stanleys, and these big financial and insurance companies were building their own training departments to do this. And now that they can provide custom training modules, which internally these financial institutions, it would have been a much greater expense for them to do it. They now actually has driven more of these bigger companies to come to the American College and send more people because now they can get the kind of training that they can't really provide internally. They've also streamlined the cost savings now by going to a more automated build process. That has tremendously saved overall cost savings of building this material, but it also has given them the automation now to do other things that they weren't really had an infrastructure to do in the past, like go to the electronic deliveries, which I'll talk about here shortly. Next. One of the other biggest challenges they had prior to going to this was keeping their print and web information in sync. If they came out with a published textbook, the delivery of the electronic version of that, when they went in for updates, the updates would occur electronically, but going in and making sure they updated the PDFs or the actual Word version of that always was a laggard in it. So they always felt that they could have missed keeping those in sync, and a lot of times they just never could keep them in sync. The expansion of the personalization now can be done due to the DITA architecture. The other thing is they realized they could actually drive more revenue because they were offering more custom courses that they couldn't do in the past, or if they did, it was at a very exorbitantly high rate. So they could actually offer more courses specific to what the audiences needed, and at a possibly even a lower rate than what it was before, which now is driving more people to come to their training for accreditation. The other thing on top of it, which was unique, was the fact that the government, because of the issues that the financial institutions and the non-regulated environment, with the new mandates and regulations that the government are putting on these different financial institutions and insurance companies, it actually has made these companies go and get more training, which they weren't expecting necessarily right away. Where they're headed is, now that they've got a DITA XML-based infrastructure in place, it now has actually opened up the door for them to use this information in other medias. And one of the medias that they're actually working on right now is the ability to go to the Kindle, the iPad, EPUB type formats. And the nice thing about that is, being in XML, they can do this by building unique style sheets to publish out to these different outputs. Again, something that they would have had a very costly time doing had they had kept this in Word. Another unique thing that we found interesting is that for their broadcast, they actually have their studio, and they do this newscast. I believe it's either on a daily basis or every other day. They actually now will send the broadcast, the actual people in their broadcast studios will actually go into the repository and grab topics of information, and that's what they actually will present for some of the articles that they do in their broadcast. So now they're actually sending a lot of the DITA information for the actual broadcast to read from and repurpose that information for the presentations that they give on their cable TV shows. So that's another thing that they weren't doing before or could leverage, but now it's all searchable and query so that they can query it to get to the topics that they want to discuss on the TV shows, which is another added benefit for them. The architecture, if we move to the next slide, the architecture is a complete Arbortext implementation where the authoring is done in Arbortext editor. They have the editor set up through the web, so they're using concurrent licenses where you actually can come in through a Citrix software app. So right from their desktops, the professors not only in their actual offices can access it, they can actually access it from home or on the road. As long as they have a high-speed internet connection, they can actually log on and create additional contents or do their edits and reviews remotely. They have the Arbortext Content Manager involved, managing and storing all the objects. They have the Arbortext Publishing Engine that's actually assembling, putting together, and publishing to the various outputs for distribution. And then today they're going to PostScript and PDF, and they are doing some HTML output today. We're still in the process of refining their web brand, as well as their iPhone and Kindle, I should say EPUB's style sheet that is being built as we speak as well, so that they'll be offering that to their clients here shortly. But it is a complete end. Yep.
Sorry, Scott, I had a question from the audience.
Shoot.
The question is an LMS factored into their solution?
Yes, it is, actually. Good question. They feed this information up to the LMS that is managing, then obviously, the LMS is a solution that, manages the curriculum. Did they pass, fail, a variety of those things. And so this content is actually being sent up to their LMS for their students. We've done some light-level integration that allows this to be done in a semi-automated fashion, but there's some things that we're actually planning on doing to improve that streamlined process from the actual content creation all the way to the distribution up to the LMS. So right now it is, I want to say it's semi-automated, but we're looking to expand on that here shortly. Good question.
Another question. Are they rethinking content chunking as they go to smaller platforms such as iPhone?
Well, they actually, good question again, they actually had to rethink that at the time that they were changing from the book paradigm to the reusable object paradigm. And that was always in the back of their mind when they created their objects. The level of granularity that they can get, we're looking at that kind of right now for the electronic distribution to the ebook platforms that are out there. Today, a lot of the information, it's more of a real, if the question was asked because of the real estate, we are trying to address a lot of the real estate limitations through the style sheet. And we believe that based on how their objects are granularized today, that this isn't going to be an issue, but that the style sheet's going to handle most of that for them. I don't know if that answers the question, but yes, you actually have to think about that early on when they went to, when they even decided to go to the DITA architecture. Did that answer the question?
Yes. They were wondering, or they were thinking that that learners' experience of needing smaller chunks would be different on smaller platform.
Good question. I'm not sure if that's really come up at all yet. And that may, but because it hasn't been quite, it isn't deployed, we're still in the testing phase. That issue, at least from from what I know today, has not really come up. So we'll have to monitor that. That's a good question, and I'll tell you what we can do is get some feedback to you probably within the next couple of weeks on that, if that's been an issue or not, or a challenge.
Yes. Okay. Great. That would be an interesting to do some research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Because they're wondering about the whole learning concept.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. If you can just get the name of the person and their email address.
Yes, absolutely, and I'll make sure that you have that following the conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Next slide. Their business benefits of integrating and authoring in the CMS are a lot of them are your standard business benefits that you're going to get by going to an XML DITA-based solution. One, now it enables collaboration. One of the things that they did not have the ability to do before was that one professor was responsible for the entire book under the old paradigm, and now they may have 3 or 4 professors, some being more specialized in certain financial or insurance practices or knowledge. And so now when they do they can actually, they've broken their professors down to more subject matter experts, and allows multiple professors to create, quality information, and then they can assemble it now from, by obviously the DITA maps, they can assemble different professors' information to build the custom training that they couldn't do before. So it's really enabled the collaboration to a much greater degree than they've ever had. Obviously improving the productivity of the information and the actual writers. We've actually gone in and streamlined, because it's being done in the Arbortext editor. As most people may know, the Arbortext editor is highly customizable. What we've done is not really customized. We've left everything out of the box. We have added a more of a productivity menu that allows them to do things in a much more automated fashion through either the style sheets or through some Arbortext command line scripting that will streamline and populate metadata, things that they would have to manually put in. Now we've created functions that would allow them to put content in quicker and faster. So that's improved their input abilities quite a bit as well. Because they're storing it in the Arbortext Content Manager, there's a single source of truth now. There's they have permissions and controls, things that you would expect on the information that they didn't really have before. The quality is improved because now they're focusing, subject matter experts are really focusing on the content and improving the content, because they've really hooked on to this reusable object concept as far as smaller chunks versus entire books. Their publishing time is tremendously decreased, and there's a slide towards the end that I'll go through all of these to give you a benchmark of where they were to what they're doing today due to these business benefits and enhancements. Next slide. So this is actually a build slide, so you probably can't build this, can you, Liz? Because I think do you have the PDF?
No, I've got the PDF.
Okay, well, basically, just to talk about this, what the American College, as well as other companies that we've worked with, and this is very common in a traditional publishing environment, the amount of dollars they were spending in their old way was pretty high. And if you think about it, if you have an effort on the left side of this chart, you'll see there's effort, and then on the bottom is time. And each one of those dotted lines represents a publication or a training module or a textbook that have to be completed for a specific client or course that they were giving. And as you can tell, as you get closer to the due date, obviously everyone works very hard and gingerly to come up with that publication. And as they put in more hours and times and effort, you can always tie dollars to effort. But once you got that course done and you presented it, then guess what? It starts over. Somebody else wants another custom type document, and you start that whole cycle. And it goes on and on and on. And this is just representing where those costs occur, which are at those peaks. But it's infinite until, you know, because the demand keeps growing. But if you once they've been implemented, on the next slide you'll see what's happened at TAC is that, and again going to a more DITA-based architecture, you'll see that there's an effort to implement the solution up front, building your style sheets, getting your CMS involved, doing the analysis of chunking that information from a book paradigm down to a reusable object paradigm, and getting that whole infrastructure involved. But once you have that involved and you hit your due dates, it's almost anticlimactic, because then the only effort now that they see is that it's more of the updating and the creation of new content is the effort that they have. Now, I'd say there's a little bit of effort in training more people or training new professors who come on board, but at least it's more of a constant, and you don't get those spikes in costs as you had the traditional way.
Sorry, I have a couple questions. So someone's curious about how much time it took from when they decided to when it was working. And follow on to that, they're also wondering if further specialization of the DTL and T spec or use the core.
Let me answer the first question. And actually, the first question may be answered on the next slide, but I'll answer it now. As far as the amount of time it took to implement this, they started this project, I want to say, in 2008 is when they got the original funding approved. They didn't get started really till the end of 2008, so the implementation for this project really took place in 2009. As a matter of fact, you know, the financial industries were kind of crumbling there in 2000, towards the end of 2008, and that's when they actually started kicking this off. They actually had this up and running, not completely. They started off with some, you know, specific training modules, that the most common ones that were always used is where they started the effort. And they were up and running, I would say, in less than a year on those. And then it probably, now they're fully up and running, and every book now is going. So it's been a couple years to get the complete amount of data set brought over, and you know, everybody on board, trained, and working in the complete system. But the first group probably was up, if I had to guess, looking back, it was probably, by the time they got the Arbortext content manager involved, the style sheets developed and everything, the first publication was done in this probably in 8 months.
Okay.
So,
another question that just got like rapid fire, a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So they want to know, how much time did the whole project take converting documents from Word to DITA maps and rewriting to the final creation of the new content? And you might have already covered that in your answer.
partially. Let me expand on that. The actual in their test books and study guides, which are very much kind of modular to begin with, we imported those. Those were actually converted over using the Arbortext import function. So we set up map files that would take word constructs and map them to the DITA constructs. Once that was set up and QA'd, bringing over their test questions and study guides really didn't take long at all. What would have taken them a lot longer, or let me say this, the longer part were their textbooks, which were very, each individual professor had their own, style and structure of doing things. And that would have been a more difficult thing to try to automatically bring over. And that's why they ended up basically having the professors rewrite those, but rewrite them from scratch. And they did that in conjunction with the demand, supply and demand from their user community. Mm-hmm. So that's what took longer. The actual bringing over the conversion of the test books and study guides probably got converted, within and cleanup within 2 or 3 months total. But it was the textbooks that they actually had to rewrite in the more module, and they had to think about that because that data was never designed that way.
Another question is, how much time to do the analysis of content?
The analysis of content, and it was kind of an ongoing thing, but the original analysis usually took about a month of effort, where they analyzed everything. They looked at all the documents across, the entire their entire data set, from test to ancillary products that they produce as well. And I would say looking at all of that was about a month.
Mm-hmm. And how many people were doing that analysis?
Well, the analysis, they had a couple of champions of professors who were not intimidated or actually were more technology savvy involved, but really understood content, along with, I'd say, a recordist and a analyst, document analyst person. So from an analysis standpoint, they had we had subject matter experts who we brought in from the content to go over the different content, but really it was more of one person and a recordist recording all that information.
So there are some content creators who won't give up formatting function for a variety of reasons. So how do you deal with these people?
Very good question. I can tell you, professors, various professions, there are a lot of egos out there, and which is a good thing. However, that can also, there are ones whose challenge is to switch to something and change how they do something can be very difficult. You're always going to get early adopters who are going to jump on. You're going to get some who are willing to jump on board but want the kinks worked out first. And then you're going to get some that are stubborn and may not want to jump on board. I can tell you this, that after the first year, it came down from the president of the college. They basically had to finally get a mandate coming down from the president that said everyone will be on board this, or basically you can look for another job. So they tried to do the politically correct thing throughout the entire process, but once they saw the early adopters who actually did the first books this way, they realized the huge benefits they were going to get, and they were hoping through through word of mouth when the early adopters got it and how great it was, and they did internal trainings, they did internal, I believe even weekly internal promotional type things where they demoed the products over and over. They did training. They trained everybody originally, and then they came back and did additional training, kind of like a recursive training, a much shorter version of it to keep people fresh on how to use it. They did all the right things, I think, up to the point where, you get 2/3 on board using it and there's still a group that isn't. Then they went to more of the, upper management mandate to get everyone on board. And quite frankly, I believe everyone is on board, and there may have been 1 or 2 people who ended up leaving the organization.
Well, great. So they spent a significant amount of time socializing it, and then when push came to shove, they said, it's either this or you're out.
Yeah, I mean, basically when it came down to the last percent, and a lot of that was driven until upper management per se saw the true benefits with the first books and stuff. It wasn't until they actually saw how this was going to really help their company in general, because then they had actual facts to prove it out with. They actually then said, okay, for those of you who aren't on board, you're either on board or you're off board, and that was it. And that pretty much stopped a lot of the internal, any internal scuttlebutt and things of that nature.
Great. Did they include? Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'll answer some more questions. There's 2 more slides if we...
Okay, there was one more question following on to that one, though. So did they include the socialization process into the overall cost of conversion? That's a very interesting one.
The socialization process can...
So the trainings and the working with everyone, did they include that in?
Included in the whole process? Yes, they did.
Yeah, in the cost of the conversion.
Oh, in the cost of migrating to those. That's a good question. I would have to go back and ask them if that was part of the cost. Being a training organization themselves, I would think it was, but I never did ask that specific question. So that is a very good question, and a one that would require follow-up on my part. I'm making an assumption that they did, just because they are a training organization, but I can be much more specific to see if that was included. The one thing that you'll see in the next 2 slides are the ROI results, and just so you know, they are totally floored with the ROIs that they got. In particular, like any business, there are 2 things that organizations look for, right? One is take costs out, reduce expenses, or increase revenue. And the thing about this particular use case study is the fact that they got both. They got it both within the first year, and I'll talk about some dollar specifics here. Today, in where most companies are financially, is everybody's been reducing costs, and over the last 2 years, companies, as everyone knows, have been laying off, reducing travel, everything to cut costs. And at some point, companies get to the point where you're very lean and really can't cut costs anymore. Where companies are now looking at is, how do I increase revenue, right? If I can't cut expense more, where do I increase revenue? And this organization got it both ways. And the last slide talks about the amount of money they actually made in revenue above and beyond what they were even expecting. So I'll talk about that here in a second. If you go to the next slide. Liz, are we there? Oh, there we go.
Sorry, there we go.
That's all right. So these are the ROI results from a task before they went to DITA and after. From book editing alone, they went to 1 to 2 months because they were copying and pasting all those things I talked about earlier, to now they're at 1 to 2 weeks, referencing topics, making sure the data, is the quality of the data is there. So that's a big, significant increase. The customization, what took 1 to 2 months, there's no additional cost now because it's all modularized. They can just create a new DITA map and customize things, not necessarily on the fly, but in almost a real-time mode. The editorial review process, what used to take a month to go through, now only takes a few days because when they make a change, it's at an object level, and they get that object reviewed and edited very quickly, as opposed to the review process and review cycle they had before would be to go through, you could break it down by chapters per se, but usually then someone would have to go through the entire book, make sure the formatting was correct, make sure that the spelling and the whole editorial part was correct, and that took several days, and in this case it was a month, down to 3 days. Book preparation from 2 months, putting together this custom book, to 2 days. Composition review, what was 1 month, now is not needed because of the automated style sheets that's doing all the formatting for them. And then lifecycle management, which they didn't really have, before. Now they have workflow, version control, various management reports. They can now see how long it takes to put together the programs, so forth and so on. Just a much more managerial tool that has been very enlightening. And they actually used that as well to prior to the mandate coming down, to show the improvements that they were making and the various benchmarks that they had early on to some of the improvements that they made, even through having a lifecycle management tool. PDF creation took minutes before. That pretty much stayed the same. And then the last two, web delivery and ebook delivery, they never had any. And really those two should say in processes and works. We've delivered, they do deliver HTML and ebook delivery today, but it has not gone into a full, complete production because we're still making various style sheet changes, some due to making sure that their brand is the way they want it, some marketing on that they're getting back to us on. And then the other, when you get to an ebook delivery, when you build an ebook delivery mechanism, what you really want to do is build a infrastructure or style sheet that would get you, 80% of the way for all types of ebooks, from the Kindle to the iPad to, what's coming down the road. And that's where we are close to finalizing now. But every electronic book, there's probably a 20% effort that still needs to be done in order to get it into that electronic delivery. As an example, the Kindle's first version of the Kindle, to publish to that, you have to know that all tables and graphics, all tables and equations are graphics, as opposed to the later version of the Kindle. So you have to make sure you do some potential post-processing or effort to get that information into the distribution that you want. So that we're still working through the finals of that. The next slide I thought was one of the most compelling slides. Go back one.
That's your next slide? I got ROI results and then you.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
You're missing a slide. So I will tell you this. The next slide really should have been a slide that was a quote. And the quote, this is directly from the customer, and I'll read it out to everyone. It said, our custom publishing capabilities supported $144,000 of new business for our corporate consulting center to date. Most of that activity has been in the last 12 months, unquote. And that came right from their director of publications. So that's $144,000 of new business. So let me put that in perspective. They were expecting, when they first implemented the solution, that they would take close to a 30 to 40% hit due to the economy, and that they were trying to find a way to really stop the bleeding of lost revenue. When they deployed this, and after the true second year is when they've got everything implemented, if their normal revenue, and I'm making this number up, if their normal revenue, say, was $2 million a year in training, they would have gotten $2,144,000. So $144,000 of new business above and beyond the normal revenue stream that they would get. And that was due to the ability to do these custom training object models and custom training programs for their clients in a very streamlined fashion. So this doesn't even talk about the reduction in expenses. This is strictly on the revenue side, new revenue generating opportunities. And they see that growing immensely over the next few years. The last two slides are, I think, just on who Oberon Technologies are. We're a privately held company. A lot of us, I would say, several of us are ex-Arbortext employees. But we've got several new employees who bring other specific XML-based publishing expertise to our organization. We do everything from process re-engineering, vision assessments, data analysis, DTD development, style sheet development, translation development and processing, and we focus on a variety, basically the four areas, which is content creation, storage and managing of the information and workflows, collaboration, and then publishing and distribution and even conversion. We are heavily involved in a variety of conversion projects as we speak as well. We are system integrators. So we have a variety of programming expertise, and right now our rate of return, our customers are long-time customers. I would say 80% of them have come back because of the success that we have had in the implementation process as well as supporting process. They've come back to ask us to work on other projects, which we take a lot of pride in. We are across industries. We have a variety of customers in publishing, to manufacturing, to financial organizations. We're very large in the life science groups. If you can imagine, a lot of various mandates there, from labeling, drug submissions, clinical studies, things of that nature. And then we have aerospace clients and some government contracts as well. Our expertise is very strong in the complete Arbortext solution, but we also work with other technologies from Adobe, MarkLogic, which is an XML database, Quark, Design Science, for those of you who are familiar with equations, and a few other IBM, most recently IBM technology as well. Next slide. And this is kind of going through everything I just said. So that's pretty much it. Liz, the last slide, if anyone is interested and would like maybe more details about the American College implementation, there's my contact information. It's on the right-hand side You can email me at syoungblum@oberontech.com or give us a call. Tim Allen is one of the other owners of the company and a very good lead architect in designing solutions like this. So he is much more familiar with the actual details of the DITA and training specialization components than I am, but feel free to provide questions to either one of us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Was there any other questions in general?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's fire away.
So the first question I've gotten this from several people throughout the entire presentation is, will these slides be available? So they understand that we're recording it, but they'd also like the slides.
Yeah, what I can do is I have been approved by the American College that I can send these out.
Okay.
They prefer if we send them out as a PDF file.
Yes.
And so I will, who would I give that to? Give it to you, Janice, or Liz?
Yeah, you can send it to me or Liz, and we'll make
Okay.
sure they get sent out to the participants in this session.
Good, and also the slides that I will send you have a few, are a little more updated, and it also has the revenue quote that I read to everybody. So I will send you out a slightly different set of slides than the one that we presented here today.
Great, okay. So hang on one second, and I have a couple more questions. So back to the techie details.
Okay.
Was the DITA learning and training spec further customized, specialized?
Well, yeah, so what we did, and again, I will take this to a little deeper technical level, but I am not, if we need more technical information, I may have to get back to that individual who asked that question. But the training specialization within DITA is in the 1.2 version, which isn't even released yet. So we actually used the current DITA, the latest DITA that is actually published version to implement the tax solution, and we had to do some use some namespace and some ways to get around to incorporate the training specialization within the current version of DITA without having the latest version, which will have a specific module for the training specialization. But the way we design this for TAC, our ability to migrate to the new version based on what we know. We actually sit on that committee, on the OASIS committees. So we're very familiar with what's been approved but hasn't been distributed. We tried, whatever we implemented, it will be a fairly easy migration that we will have to do. It's really not even a migration, it's more of a transformation from how we're doing it today to what the core DITA DTD will have here, assuming that what is currently, I believe, up for vote gets approved. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but that's...
Okay. Well, if they have further question on that, they can type it in. Another question.
Please send that to Tim, myself, and Tim Allen. Actually, address it to Tim Allen, and he can actually give you much more detailed descriptions than I can.
Okay. Yeah, we just have time for a couple more questions. Are the writers at American College developing their content using varied topic types, or are they mostly using a generic type to make it easier for themselves?
I believe they're doing both. Some are using various topic types, as well as then others are I think it's a combination of the two. That's how I'd answer that.
Okay. Someone else is asking if you use the Altova's XML and XSL suite of products.
Do we use them, or is the question addressed to Oberon or to the American College?
They were not specific in it. Oberon, to you.
Okay. Yes, we do use those tools internally.
Okay. Good. But it looks like we've covered all the questions so far. That's all the questions I have for you. Oh, wait.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate you having me speak, and again, I apologize for the earlier technical difficulties, but I think we got through that. And I will make these available and send these slides to you, Janice, and or Liz, or both.
Great. I have one more late question.
Yep.
So they weren't sure if you had already answered this or not, but they wanted to know, were you using the standard DITA concept task reference categories or a customized version?
We use the standard ones, but we did have to go in and augment. Again, this would be a question for Tim for more specifics, but we did have to augment a few things that are now being addressed in the new version of the DITA Training 1.2 Specialization. So there were some things we did have to augment, but we see the new version of DITA is addressing all of this stuff, which will be more straightforward and out of the box.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Now, and that's the last question, but I am getting a lot of comments fired off to me. Thanks so much, Scott. This was great. This was terrific. So we're getting lots of praise and accolades for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the weekend.